Welcome to HIV Hope and Charity, a podcast series brought to you by TVPS, a charity that's been supporting people affected by HIV since 1985. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Jess, and we work for TVPS. And our aim is to get as many people as possible HIV educated. If you like the podcast, please rate, subscribe, and leave us a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Hello, Sarah.
Hello.
Welcome to another HIV Heroes episode.
Yes, thank you.
Still socially distanced.
Still sat on the floor. I don't imagine that Chris and Rosie Ramsey, when they're recording Shagged, Married, Annoyed, sit on their living room floor to do this.
I bet they do. In my mind, they do.
I mean, they probably don't have to socially distance because they're married.
Oh, that's true, actually. We're having to take all the precautions because we are not of the same household, nor are we married.
No.
Right. Today, I'm very excited about today.
I'm
always excited.
Look at your little face, you're beaming.
I'm always excited. This week, my HIV hero is an openly gay, openly HIV positive, British-Nigerian priest of the Anglican Church of England. Some call him the Happy Holy Homosexual, but you might have heard of him as the phenomenal Reverend Jide Macaulay.
Oh my goodness. Oh, this is going to be good.
Yes, right.
Look at me, settling back in.
Get comfortable, it's a long one. Okay, so I just need to go through all my sources quickly. I've got quite a few this week. So my sources are a Pink News article by Scarlett Pestel, the Saving Lives website, the Black Boy Joy podcast, an article written by Jide Macaulay for Legit.ng, and an article from the National Black Justice Coalition, but it doesn't actually state who the author is. You may be aware that he does an awful lot of work in the world of HIV awareness, and so I thought I would give you a little bit of background and tell you a bit of some of Jide's life and what led him to be so involved in both HIV support and LGBTQ plus community support. So I thought I'd give you a little bit of backstory.
I like it.
Before we start, I know we always say it, but it is important to say that we're just focusing on a small element of these people's lives. There's so much more to them than just this. They have wide and fascinating lives, but we're just sort of looking at the HIV aspect of their life.
Yes.
I always feel like I don't want someone to be like, you did a podcast about me and this is all you mentioned? And it's like, well, I don't have time. Oh, got so excited there, I smacked the table.
Oh my goodness. This is the most animated I've ever seen.
Well, do you know what? I really want to do him justice.
It is quite a lot of pressure, isn't it?
Massively, because you don't want to miss anything. You don't want to misrepresent someone, do you? So let's go back to the beginning.
Is it the 80s?
Sadly, it's the 60s.
Okay, well, it's still a good era.
So, Jide was born in London on November the 4th, 1965. When he was 3 years old, his family moved back to Nigeria and he was raised there. Now, he first became aware that he was gay around age 7, and then at 14 he had his first same-sex love. But growing up in Nigeria, a country opposed to being gay, where there were no visible gay role models to look to, Jide reacted to this first love with confusion, guilt, personal rejection, and these are all feelings that he says followed him well into adulthood.
Yeah, I bet.
He had a hard time in childhood and was bullied frequently. Part of it was around him not having girlfriends, and this is terrifying. On one awful occasion, some boys from his area wanted him to have sex with a girl or they threatened to beat him up. Yeah, which has to be so damaging on so many different levels. So he did have sex with the girl, but feels it just was an out-of-body experience. He just wasn't there.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So we've talked about the feelings of shame, as I mentioned, and self-rejection that Jide felt about being gay. As we said, he carried these on into adulthood. And so he decided to undertake 40 days of fasting and praying. Praying not to be gay, praying for a wife. He was praying and fasting to get rid of all of these feelings.
Okay, so he's decided then that to kind of rid himself of his feelings.
Yeah, as he got older, obviously,
as
he became an adult, yes.
That he would do 40 days of fasting.
Yes.
And praying.
Yes.
Do you know, my heart just goes kind of out to him, really.
Yeah.
I think it's really difficult. I mean, coming to terms with your sexuality during kind of teenage years, whatever years actually, is still not easy, is it?
Completely. I couldn't actually... I think this was around when he was 20. Yeah, so it's, he's come out of his teenage years. He's in his young adulthood, really, isn't he?
Definitely. And that is the age when you really want to conform, don't you?
Yes, you want to be like everyone else, don't you? It's easier to just carry on that path. Obviously, he's gone through this fasting and praying for 40 days. And when he finished, he asked a beautiful woman from his church out on a date. And when she said yes, he declared that he was no longer gay. He really felt his prayers had been answered. Obviously you've done this 40 days of fasting and praying, and then suddenly you ask this beautiful woman out, you find her attractive. She says yes, and you go, right, this is it, it's done.
Yeah, my work here's done.
Yeah.
Away I go.
Exactly. This only fueled his denial about being gay. So he had decided he could move on.
Yeah.
That was all over with. So he met her in 1987 when he was 20, and they married in 1991. And a year later, they had a son. And Jide hoped that the marriage would just cure him of being gay. And actually, it's quite interesting because it's something we know that still to this day happens.
Yes. Yeah.
People marrying in the hopes that they can live in an opposite sex relationship and be happy. Somehow their feelings will go away. And that must be so difficult. And I actually think it's really brave for those, whatever time in their life, manage to come out and say, actually, this isn't how I feel, and I want to be myself. And I know that we certainly see people who are still in those situations.
Definitely.
And that must be, so difficult. And so, of course, that's what happened to Jide. After 3 years of marriage, the relationship broke down. He decided to come out as gay in 1994, and it was extremely difficult. He describes the process of it all as a disaster. He was hated, denounced on mainly religious grounds. He was called a sinner, a defiler, an abomination. After being so brave, I can't imagine receiving that much hate.
No, I know.
Taken so much.
From your own community.
Yeah, well, it's interesting you say that. So Jide decided to leave his community and his religion behind.
Oh gosh, what, the whole lot?
Yeah, in search of who he was. And he said, this is a quote, from him, "The bitterest part was that the church and the religious community I had cherished and adored were the first to ostracise me. This was the beginning of a love-hate relationship with Nigeria, Nigerians and the church." That's the end of the quote. But yeah, so he found it really difficult to trust anyone, and he sort of bounced from one Christian community to another and was ill-treated by all of them when they found out he was gay. So it's not just one.
Oh my goodness, and this was in the 80s? Yes, okay.
No, this is 90s. This is 90s, isn't it? He came out in 94. You keep wanting to go back to the 80s, don't you? It's your favourite.
Yeah, I'll do anything to pull it back to my favourite era.
But
that's quite shocking, because that's a time when, oh gosh, I'm going to probably show my naivety here, but, I grew up in the kind of 80s and 90s, and kind of people's sexuality wasn't such a big deal as it had been kind of previously. There were not lots of famous people, but some quite kind of iconic names who'd come out as gay, and yet still lots of communities where it was completely unacceptable.
But then I guess even within some elements of the church now, I'm not saying all, we still see quite a lot of homophobia, don't we? So I think it's, although hard to believe, you can sort of think, actually, that must have been a really difficult time. If people are still feeling, oppression now and prejudice, and we're in...
Yeah, you're right, of course. In my world, I just like everybody to be accepting of everybody.
I know.
I feel like you're ruining my little bubble over here. It's like, no, it's never been like that.
Well, this is kind of, like I said, it's the backstory of showing us what made Jide who he is and how he is, and so it's only really looking at all of these things and everything he went through.
I am rooting for him already. I want this to have a good ending.
Well, let's see. So Jide did find a Christian community that was welcoming to their LGBTQ plus community, and that was called the Metropolitan Community Churches, MCC movement. And Jide, although outside of this organisation, he still had to deal with discrimination, and not only because of his sexual orientation, but actually due to racism as well. He describes his faith at this point as only growing stronger, and in 1998, so 4 years after he's come out, he was ordained as a Christian minister.
Oh!
So he's kind of come back around after going to find himself and sort of walking away from his community and his church for a while. He's come back around. So
Oh, good. Oh, I like that. I'm happy that he kind of refound his religion.
Yes, it's especially when it's something that means so much to you.
Absolutely.
So we're going to fast forward a few years.
Okay.
So we're fast forwarding to 2003, where Jide was awarded Man of the Year by the UK Black LGBT Awards for his role helping LGBT people of faith. And this, I should say, is an award he went on to receive again in 2007.
Ooh.
So he's only been ordained in 98, and just a few years later, the difference he's already making to that community is huge.
Oh, see, I love people like that. It's not enough for them just to be kind of ordained and then do their job. They're then looking to change from within.
Exactly.
Oh, that takes quite a strong person to do that.
Well, let me carry on.
Okay.
So 2003 was also a memorable year for him, but for another reason. In January 2003, Jide was diagnosed with HIV. He hadn't been unwell, and he didn't have any symptoms, so he said he wasn't nervous at all about having the test, just a routine test for him. When he went back to the clinic to get his results, he was shocked to find out that he was HIV positive, and he describes it as everything feeling clouded. He felt that he was going to die. This is Jide describing that time. When I found out, I reacted so badly. I cried for days. I felt disgusted with myself. The guy I was so fond of and my regular sexual partner had infected me, and he was nowhere to be found after my diagnosis. At that point, I hated him, but not anymore. The first person I told cursed me and called me a slut, said I deserved to die. A good friend responded differently. He took me to his house. He bathed me. He gave up his bed for me. He promised me I'll be okay. But I was gay, now with HIV, and I believed then that God was punishing me.
Oh, no. Oh, I just want to give him a social
After everything he'd already been through.
Yes. And
another hurdle.
Kind of accepted everything and who he is. Oh, and then he beats himself up because he's got HIV. No, you shouldn't have done that. Oh, but his friend, thank goodness he had a good friend.
Yeah, completely. And actually, I wanted to say we often still hear the God is punishing me as well, don't we?
Yes.
With people who are newly diagnosed and certainly feel that way.
We do. And actually, I find that a difficult topic to discuss because I think the first question that we get asked when we're saying, no, that's not, is, well, are you religious?
Yes.
What church do you go to? How can you speak with authority on this? And, you know, if they then find out that you don't go to church, then we don't understand.
But we do have, like we were talking about peer support in previous podcasts, we do have some amazing clients who are religious, who very much have their own point of view on all of this, who are able to, we can pair them up and they can have those conversations about religion, HIV, God's punishment, all of those things. And I think that's essential, isn't it?
In that situation, absolutely. And it's worked really well in the past. And, you know, I mean, I'm always glad that somebody has their faith because it can be very comforting and it's a really strong community. But when that faith is challenged, you know, the journey those people have to go through, they should never have to go through that alone.
I completely agree. Right. Jide, as we've just been discussing, has been through so much to this point. You know, coming to terms with his sexuality, coming to terms with being, you know, rejected by his church, his communities, and now coming to terms with his HIV diagnosis. That's a huge amount to go through. Most people would be focusing on themselves, their own well-being, you know, I just need to get my head around this. But not Jide. So he knew there were others like him going through similar things. So in 2006, so again 3 years, that's not a massive amount of time after his diagnosis, he went on to found the House of Rainbow Fellowship in Lagos, Nigeria. And it's the first Christian denomination to welcome lesbian, gay, bisexual, transsexual and intersex people in a country that is hostile to all of these people. And, well, ironically, or perhaps not so ironically, it was the same year that the Nigerian government introduced anti-gay laws.
Did they really?
Yeah, 2006.
So despite them doing that, he's just gone ahead and set up this organisation anyway. Yeah,
and I'm absolutely in awe of the bravery that must have taken where, you know, it is a country where you're likely to be disowned, attacked, imprisoned just for being yourself.
Yeah.
And I think we really take that for granted sometimes, don't we? It's just easy.
Oh, over here?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh, yeah, absolutely.
Well, it wasn't all plain sailing.
I was thinking it. I mean, it's quite phenomenal. They put laws in place and he's just like, no, I'm going to set up the House of Rainbow.
Yeah. It did run into a lot of trouble with residents and the Nigerian government, and amid a massive media frenzy, there were numerous attacks and death threats made against Jide and other members. Jide's home was vandalised and members of his family were threatened.
Really? Oh, the strength of feeling.
Yeah. And so in 2008, so again 2 years after he set it up, he was forced to flee Nigeria for his own safety. Like, it was that bad. But despite the dangers, I should say, Jide secretly travelled back and forth to Nigeria to reach the communities that they served. And again, it's so selfless, putting himself at risk to continue to support these communities that desperately needed it, and not just walking away when things got
Yeah, because he
tough.
knows what they're going through. He's not one to give up, is he?
Oh no. So to this day, Jide is still the CEO of the House of Rainbow, and it's got active communities in 22 countries, mostly in Africa, which is amazing. And I'm so pleased that they've been able to expand and keep offering this support. I mean, unbelievable. In 2013, he was ordained as a priest in the Church of England.
Wow.
I know, it just goes on and on.
I know.
I have to say, it was like, since then, so that's sort of his background and kind of what made him who he is, or part of it. And since then, I have to say, and I know we've sort of talked about this in other podcasts as well, he's done so many things, it would take me, I swear, about another 2 podcasts to list them all and to find them all. So what I've done is just put together some highlights for you. So he's part of the NAM Africa Advocacy Foundation project, Positive Champions, which promotes HIV testing to black communities across London. He's an ambassador for Saving Lives, the amazing charity.
Oh, I love them.
Yeah, encouraging people to get tested for HIV. As you know, he's heavily involved in the National HIV Test Week campaigns.
Yes.
And has been featured on the publicity materials. It's always nice to see his smiley face, isn't it?
Yeah.
He's the chairperson of the International Network of Religious Leaders Living with HIV in Europe. He's a volunteer chaplain at Mildmay Mission Hospital, an HIV care centre.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm still going on, I've got more.
Oh my goodness.
And this is just a small snippet, I have to tell you. He's developing resources on specific Black African queer theology and is working on a House of Rainbow project called REMA, Radically Inclusive Mission to Africa, in association with destabilising heteronormativity.
Wow.
Yeah, in the near future, it's Jide's hope to enhance the broad spectrum of the inclusive gospel across the world, particularly to marginalised communities in Africa. He's an inspirational speaker, I should say, an author, a poet. He's written poetry books. Pastor, preacher, he holds a degree in law, a master's degree in theology, postgraduate certificate in pastoral theology. Not to mention, I have to say, the countless panels, podcasts, seminars, interviews, programmes, projects that he has been involved in, and the many, many award nominations he has received. So this man, to kind of summarise a little bit, he's received hate, death threats, been shunned by his church, for some of the time his family, his community. He's still kept fighting for himself and others in the hope that they don't have to experience what he did. He's an HIV activist, a fierce LGBTQ plus campaigner, a vital role model. And I actually think, I know we talked right at the start where he said there were no role models when he was young. I think he's become the role model that he wanted when he was a young boy. He describes himself as a voice for gay people within the church and also a voice for HIV positive people within the church, and is committed to educating faith leaders. And in an interview with the Pink News, he said, if gay were put into an acronym, G-A-Y, it simply means God adores you, God admires you, God accepts you, God accommodates you, God anoints you. And that is just some of the history of my HIV hero, the remarkable Reverend Jide Macaulay.
Oh my goodness. Do you ever feel that we perhaps don't do enough
Yeah,
for our HIV charity?
Yes, I do. Every week when I do my research, I'm blown away by these people. Oh, I should actually say you can follow him on Twitter, Instagram, and on Facebook. And obviously we'll put all those handles out there because people need to go and see the work he's doing. And yeah.
Gosh, he must have phenomenal energy.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
To do all of that.
He is an amazing, amazing man. And that's why it sort of jumps from his history straight into... because he's done so much. It was like, where do I begin? Where do I end? So yeah, go and check him out. Go and look him up. He's an absolutely amazing guy.
Oh my gosh. You know, we always say be more Jill.
Yeah.
I think we should be more Jill and Jide.
Oh, I love that. Hashtag be more Jide.
Yes. Perfect. Let's be both.
I love it. Right. Awesome. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Thank you for listening to HIV Hope and Charity. If you'd like to know more about the work that we do, visit tvps.org.uk. And please like, subscribe and rate the podcast if you enjoyed it.